What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Paul Theology's daily devotional, man. And we got a good one today. We got a good one. You know, when you go through the scriptures and you're reading and you hear all these things sometimes, this is one of the times where we can assuredly say and send people to when they ask the question, was Jesus God? Or is Jesus God? He's alive today, living, seated on the throne, king over all things, Yahweh. That is who Jesus is. And today we are going to see a glimpse of how we can use the scriptures to do that. So it's going to be an apologetics type day today, as well as just another day in which we just study deeper and grow closer and trust in Jesus more. Knowing that Jesus is Yahweh helps us trust in him more, because if he's God of creation, makes all things, done all things, is living on his own, sustaining life, then pretty easy to trust in, right? All knowledgeable, all wise, you know, got all power. All those attributes that he is, we're going to see all the attributes we talk about and ascribe to all to God. We're going to see that that is who Jesus is today. So glad you guys are with me, and glad you're studying and diving into scripture. This is Trust in Jesus Ministries, Pauline Theology's daily devotional. So let's jump into it. What scripture are we in? Well, we are in John chapter 12, verse 41. If you haven't read it yet, go ahead, stop the tape, see what it has to say, come back, we'll answer 4 questions. If you have already read it, let's go and jump into it. The first question is, what's going on, man? What's happening? Well, what's going on is that John the writer has quoted a scripture. He has quoted something that Isaiah said that ascribes something to Jesus. And it talks about, how come people aren't believing, man? Jesus is doing all these things. He's speaking. He's showing all these signs. He's doing all these amazing things, yet people aren't believing in who Jesus is and what he says. They're not believing the message that the Father has sent him to tell everybody about. Like, why not? Why not? And he said it's because God, in his infinite plan and wisdom overall, has caused these people to not believe, but also because they're not turning from their sins. They are not turning away in their hearts to see the truth about who God is. And then it says why Isaiah could say these things. Like, what's the reason why Isaiah why is John able to quote Isaiah? And then why these things are kind of like a mirror or a repeating of what was happening during Isaiah's day is happening now with Jesus. It's like, why was Isaiah continually saying these things, even though they were not believing? Why could Isaiah continue to fight? Why could Isaiah persevere, even though all this difficult drama was happening, where he was broken down, disheartened, and discouraged because the people that he is preaching to were not believing the word and trusting in Yahweh? Well, it says that Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory and he spoke about him. It says Isaiah did this is because he saw his glory. And this his here is referring to Jesus, because John goes back out of the scriptures and talks about Isaiah and the reason behind he said these things. And he says because he saw his glory. Now, when he's talking about his glory, well, what are we talking about? Because that doesn't say anything in particular about Isaiah seeing the glory of God. Well, if we dive deep into Isaiah, the book, and we see where his commission came from, well, it started in chapter 6, and it says that he was in the place where he saw the glory of God, the train of his robe, and filled the room, and he saw the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He saw Yahweh. He got to see and be a part of an image or a vision, and was revealed the glory of God. He saw Yahweh. And so when John first off, when Isaiah describes this incident in chapter 6, as he writes it down for us to read, he says it's Yahweh, the glory of the Lord. And then when John comes back and he writes this in his gospel and he talks about what Isaiah saw and who Isaiah said he saw, well, he says his as referring back to Jesus. And so he is ascribing Yahweh with Jesus. So that's the first thing that we should take from this, is that as John writes this, he understands and knows that Jesus is Yahweh. Jesus is God in the sense that we say God, G-O-D, but Yahweh is his name. And that is the God of Israel, the one who has done all these things, the God who has created all things. And when we see it's just a reference to what goes back to John chapter 1 in the prologue, when it says that in the beginning was a God, and he was with God and was God. I'm sorry, in the beginning was the Word, and he was with God and was God. It's just going back to that idea of the person of the Trinity, and how Yahweh is three in one, and that there's difficult things to understand and know. But it is not that we should necessarily understand them, but it is that we believe them, because as God describes himself, he tells us who he is so that we might know. And in the same way, through his scripture, he is telling us. Jesus is saying that he is Yahweh. And he's been saying it through this entire book himself. Whenever the Jews pick up stones to stone him because it said they ascribed himself as being equal with God, one footing with God. But John, through the way that he speaks, does it as he says that's who Isaiah saw. Is that Isaiah saw Jesus. Now we also read in another one of book of John, it says that no man has seen the Father. And Jesus says that himself. He says the way the Father is revealed is through him. And so when unnecessarily on a side note, we can say that when Yahweh manifests himself, when the God of the world, the universe, and all creation manifests himself and he reveals himself in the person of the Son. Not necessarily Jesus, because Jesus is the human person in time that he has robed himself with flesh in at the time. But he does say the pre-incarnate Christ is kind of the way we speak about it. But it is the second person of the Trinity, the Son, the eternal Son. So when he reveals himself in any capacity, he is revealing himself through the Son. That's a little side note, guys. That's a little side note. But that is a powerful thing that we're seeing right here. It's just so good. But there's another thing that happens in relationship to the fact that he saw Jesus, that we can take from this scripture that Jesus is Yahweh. But a second thing is that he reacted to his vision of that. He did something. And it says, and that's why he spoke concerning him. He spoke concerning him. And so these things that we're seeing here, this prophecy, this revelation that's being revealed to us, and now we see it as being fulfilled. Isaiah did this because he saw the glory of God. So what does this say about God? First off, and most highly, is that Jesus is Yahweh, that Jesus is God. He is the second person in the Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. He is the eternal Son, the one who was with God and was God, was before him face to face in relation to him, laying in the very bosom, and displays who he is in every who the Father is in every aspect as he has revealed to us. And that's really what's so sad that Isaiah and the gospel writer is lamenting, is the fact that he is revealing himself in such a way that we could see the Father and know him, yet we are not believing. So what we can see from this is that Jesus is God. Well, what does this say about man? Well, it says that when we see God, we seeing Jesus, is that Jesus perfectly reveals who the Father is. So as we look to know who Yahweh is, we can know him intimately through the person of Jesus. I think in Hebrews it says something like, in these final days, he's revealed himself ultimately in the person of Jesus. And so Jesus is the way in which we can know the Father. And that's literally what this whole book is about, is the fact that Jesus himself has come to narrate or help us to understand. He explains who the Father is and his love for us. And so when we look at Jesus, we're seeing the Father. And when we look to see and know Yahweh, we got to look to see and know Jesus. And then second, I think it says about man is that our actions need to be motivated by the glory of God. When Jesus reveals himself to us, that is the motivation and the action for us to do everything that we do. It's because of who Jesus is. There was a statement, I'm trying to think of it, but it is a powerful thing. For me, it's always been the statement is not for, but because. I don't do things for God, but I do things because of God, what he has done for me. And so it's not like performance out of, it's not a performance to gain approval, but it is a performance because we are approved. And so that is our motivation. It's because we've seen the glory of God and we realize how beautiful and wonderful it is, just as Isaiah. So how do we apply these truths to our lives, man? Well, I think first off, we must remember that the God of the Old Testament is the same God of the New Testament. I think sometimes we have a problem in disassociating the two. It's gone on since the very beginning of the Christian faith, and it still continues today. That some say, well, why is the God in the Old Testament this way, and then and Jesus is this way? Well, they're the same God. He is Yahweh. Jesus is Yahweh. So there's no difference. It's just understanding those nuances. And if you have any questions about those nuances, man, put them in the comments or the show notes or anything like that, and I'll check them out and see what I can do to answer those questions. But we must realize that there is a unity because Jesus is Yahweh. So when it speaks about who God is, his character and his nature, it is the same person, Jesus, whom these descriptions are describing. So how do we apply these truths to our lives, man? Well, I'm sorry. We've been applying these truths to our lives right here in the first sense that we understand who God is as the same God of the Old Testament and New Testament. But I think the next thing that we can use to apply these truths in our lives is our response to the revelation that Yahweh has brought. When we get to know Jesus, when we meet Jesus, when we come and see Jesus, it should impact every aspect of our lives. It should motivate us and move us, persuade us to pursue him and others in the same way that he pursued us. It should impact every aspect and every corner of our lives. Hey, I appreciate you guys for listening, man, and I hope that this is helping you grow closer in your relationship with him and understanding the nature of Jesus as Yahweh, as we've talked about him here, but also as man, because he is 100% God and 100% man. So I pray that you would take these truths and grow in them. I will see you guys in the next episode.